and let me know. I'll keep the chat alive in my phone, which was actually one of the issues that we were having here. And yeah, we'll see what we do. So a few different angles, a few different new stuff going on here today. So I'll show a little bit of those now. Some of the overhead of the new rig, a little bit of a side view so you can see more of what's going on up here. Yeah, let's see how this is going. It looks like we're live, but if we are, let me know what you hear in the chat. So let me know what's going on. Let's see, any chat action going on here. You should be able to hear just a kick, something a little higher as well as the mic. Want to make sure we're getting all of that through. So yeah, let me know in the chat if you're able to hear stuff, if you're able to see stuff, and yeah, and what's going on. And we will keep rolling along as soon as I know that things are working. So if we have, let's see here. All right, looks like Ruffian's on. Let me know. Can you hear? All good? Sweet. All right, all good. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. So yeah, welcome. I'll switch to a different view here. New camera angles, so you can see a little bit more stuff here. Yeah, I wanted to, I hadn't done one of these in a little while, so I wanted to jump on and do a little stream about the new setup that we have going here. New case, new build, added some extra stuff, took away some of the boxes, streamlined down just a little bit in order to be able to, I don't know, get more out of the performances as I travel and play live, and yeah, and make sure that I have everything that I need, but not things that I don't need, so that I can travel at least a little bit lighter. We'll see. I had to slim down some things so that I could build up the larger case and still be able to travel reasonably light. And so, yeah, so that's what we're doing. So just a quick walkthrough of what's going on. I'll show you the overhead here. So still the Oxy One, taking care of everything that is sequencing, the whole rig. Then in the live rig, you can see on the lower portion down here, a whole lot of mixing going on the bottom, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a little bit. Some voices and some effects on the next row. And then as we get to the upper rows, we've got some new voices, some old voices that have shown back up again. A couple new effects in here, and actually quite a bit more effects. And a little bit of modulation, which is still not a huge amount my thing. So we'll, that'll come and go. We'll see. Something else may end up going in that space. But yeah, that's kind of everything all together. One of the reasons for all of this extra mixing capability on the bottom was because of adding in a whole bunch of new stuff up above, a whole bunch of new voices and things like that. So I needed a bit extra. So now what we're doing here with the mixing side of things, we still have the board brain Exelon mixer right here, which is kind of like the central piece. Then this is a 3-channel expander of the Exelon. So these additional 3 channels share the same effect sends. Then right over here on this side, which you probably can't see super well, is a new, it's a prototype module. It's coming out pretty soon now from board brain as well. It's called the XI3, and it's basically an additional 3-channel input, but it just in 8 HP that also shares the same 2 effect sends with everything. So it's just got a volume knob and the 2 effect sends, and then you can select the A or B outputs. Other than that, it doesn't have it doesn't have faders, it doesn't have gain, it doesn't have pan. It's just a simple way to get things into your mixer so that you can keep everything kind of mixing along. I'm using it to run the Digitone 2 in, and also when I have the Digitact, which I don't have right now, that's going in here, and that leaves me an extra stereo input that I can use for other stuff. This past weekend, when I was out in LA for the Buchla and Friends event, I played a show with Sign Mountain, and we actually used one of these inputs to take his stereo submix and run it into here, so that way everything was going through one set of outputs for a kind of a final performance mix. So yeah, that was the whole point of this section. Then in the end, obviously the Oxymeta performance effects, and then inside the case, so we've got the battering ram and archer's rig, which I've had for quite a while, kick drum and percussion module. Archer's rig's going through its own insert effects. We'll talk about this in just a minute. Then we have the Bastel Pizza FM synth that's going through the WMD Carbon, and it has its own effects as well. Then we have the Endorphins Ghost, which is one of my two sends. So I can send everything through that to create some kind of cool atmospheric effects washes. And then the output module from BoardBrain, the monitor. And then up in the upper section, Polycinematic, which I haven't had in my case for quite a while, but it fit, and I wanted to try out using it for some stabs and things like that. Then we have the BIA and the VO Reno, which I've had for quite a while, but those are going through a couple of new effects from Noise Engineering. So the Desmodus Versio and the Melodus Versio. One is a, what do they call it? A tail generator. So it's basically a reverb, but it's not really a reverb. It's kind of digitally generating a tail, and it can also be used for some bits of delay and kind of warble and stuff like that, which is cool. And then the Melodus is a granulator. So you've got some granular effects. So this I'm using for kind of background effects washes and cool things like that. A little bit of modulation and PAMs for clocking. And then the causal and frequency shifter, which is on my other master send. That goes through its own filter and then back into its own channel here. And then let's see what else. Erica Synth's bassline for bass and leads and all that kind of fun stuff. The Quadranted Swarm has found its way back into my case now that I finally have enough space for it. One of my favorite synths, and I just hadn't been using it because I didn't have the space for it. And since I went to this larger case, I was able to add it back in, and it's going through the Erica Synth's dual effects. So I've got one delay and one reverb on these two effects, so I can kind of do whatever I want with this one. And then some modulation over here, the ZR and its outside module. And then I have a sample and hold, which I haven't really been using much yet, but I have it here because I plan on messing around with it with some other stuff. And then we have the Digitone 2, and then everything kind of runs out through the Analog Heat Plus effects. And then over here on the side, let's see, you can kind of see it in this. I have the 1010 black box, and I switched it up. I stopped with the Launch Control XL. It was a little big, and I started using now the Chic N32 32 knob controller. Still has the same number of knobs and stuff as the Launch Control XL, but it's a lot smaller for controlling the black box. So yeah, so that's kind of the whole setup right now. You'll notice that the Digitact 2 is pulled out for the moment. I'm trying to scale back down, and that was kind of the piece that I was using the least with this new setup. Since I got the Digitone 2, I found that the Digitact 2, kind of all I was doing with it was hi-hats and a couple little percussive things, and I can do those in the Digitone 2 as well. And so I just decided to pull that out for now, and we'll see with the 1010 black box. That one, I'm using it for some really specific stuff, and I want to kind of scale things down again. So I may end up getting a Bitbox Micro and just putting it in my case, so I can use that for a few percussion loops and some kind of time stretched vocally type things as well, which is all I'm really using it for right now, because Sub has moved into Digitone and atmospheres have moved into the case with the BIA, and I'll show you guys that in just a little while. So that is where we're at with the setup. Let's see in the chat. If you have any questions, pop those in the chat and I'm happy to answer whatever. So let's see here. Ruffian, what's up? Good to see you, James, as well. How was the show? The show was great. It was tons of fun. Yeah, it was nice. It was always great to play with a lot of friends and for a lot of friends. It was packed out. The room was really fun. It was a small spot, but it was full of people. Had a lot of good friends come to the show, which was really good as well. So yeah, it was great. Matthew, hi Circle, was at your gig. Oh, cool, you were there. Yeah, excellent. So James asked how it was. Go ahead and let him know how it was in the chat. Yeah, I think it was great. I had a great time. Had a few technical difficulties, which I'm happy to talk about as well. That was something that I spoke about with my my students in my course this week. We were talking about kind of what can go wrong in a performance and what to do if things go wrong and how to try to prevent things from going wrong. And so it was good to talk about some kind of real world things that actually happened in the show, which made for an interesting time, I guess you could say. It was, there's always a little bit of added stress when something's going weird in your setup. So yeah, that was the case. We were having a little bit of trouble clocking. I was playing with another guy and the clock signal wasn't exactly working the way we wanted it to, and we finally figured it out. It was a setting on his end. And then I was having issues with headphones. I couldn't monitor my output signal. And so before I play, I like to be able to make sure my output signal is working. And I couldn't hear it in the headphones, but I could see it in, if you look, let's see here, go to the overhead. So if you look on this screen on the analog heat, you can see, if I bring up that kick again, let's see here. So you can see the level meters here, and I have some on my output module, which is right here as well. But then there's also these level meters over here. So I could tell that my output was working correctly, but I couldn't hear it, which is a little frustrating because I wanted to be able to kind of check a couple of things beforehand and I wasn't able to. I think my cable wasn't connected correctly to my headphones or whatever. So that ended up being a little bit of added stress, but not anything too crazy. But yeah, so it was just some little things like that, which is always interesting. And also it was really hard to hear in there because all the speakers were kind of facing away and the subs were on the floor kind of behind people. So we couldn't really hear a ton of stuff. And so it was a little bit hard to monitor, but it's okay. It was a lot of fun anyway. And those kind of like DIY party events can be some of the most fun. So let's see. The only thing was the sound system did not make justice to the music. A couple of 100 watts were missing. Yeah, I agree. It was, we were using the III wireless speakers for the mids and highs, which they sound great. It's just once you got a room full of people absorbing sound with their clothes and their bodies and stuff, it really kind of muffled stuff rather than kind of giving it the sound that it needed. And they had a small sub as well, which probably could have been a little bit more powerful, but it was cool. I mean, it was a fun event. It was good to see people. It was good to play with friends and all that stuff. So it was a good one, but anyway, so yeah, I wanted to go over a few things today, particularly some of the changes in what I'm doing with the setup and why, because I get asked that all the time. Why do you use this, or why aren't you using this anymore? And my live setup is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing from, not necessarily because something's bad or something's good, but I'm always trying to evolve it, look for new sounds. Sometimes I get tired of sounds and I want to use something else. Sometimes I get a new piece of gear and I want to integrate it, or sometimes I'll find a different solution which will allow me to do things with different gear. So for example, taking the Digitact out was because I was really only using it for kind of one-shot drum samples, and I found that I was able to do most of that in the digitone, so then I didn't need it, so I was able to take it out. Not that it's not good, and if I had all the gear in the world, or if I was going to just a local show where I was just gonna hop in the car and drive there, I would take everything. I would take all the good stuff. You know, I'd bring my analog rhythm, and I would bring a couple of full-size synths. I'd love to bring the SH-101 and stuff like that, but when I have to take a plane to travel somewhere, I need to keep everything as tight as possible. So being able to eliminate a whole box, kind of like when I switched over and started using the Meta instead of the Octatrack for effects, that allowed me to take out a box. Not that I don't still love the Octatrack, it's right over there. Still one of my favorite pieces of kit. I still will keep it, I love it, but I just don't take it with me when I travel for shows. So yeah, that's kind of what drives a lot of these decisions. And right now, like I said, I'm thinking about eliminating the black box and the MIDI controller that goes with it in order to just move a bit box into my case, because I have some space where I could move some things around and put it in here. And that way I can use it just for percussion loops and vocals. And that's because I was able to change up some other stuff. So for example, I was using the black box for things like this. So you can probably hear that kind of background atmosphere stuff. I like those as kind of foundational elements in what I'm playing. I did need to be able to control it a little bit extra within the MIDI controller so that I could pitch things so that they would always kind of at least go with what I'm playing and weren't totally off. Now what I've started doing, which is really a lot of fun, is I'm using the BIA through a filter and then through these two effects. And so I can still use the BIA, like if I take these effects away, I can still have the sound of the BIA, right? So this is just the BIA by itself through a filter, right? But going through these effects, I can create using that same tone, which is in key because it's being sequenced in key from the Oxy, so I don't have to worry about pitch. Then I can start to add reverb. And I can bring that all the way up to 100% wet. And then you have control over tone. If I bring back down the dry wet a little bit, I can take that all the way back down to 0. Then if it goes through the granulator, and again, tone control, and then what's really cool is when you combine the two, you get a lot of tonal flexibility with it and the ability to do those same kind of background atmospheres. So because I added those effects in and I made it so that I can use the BIA either with or without the effects, it made it so that I don't need to have something dedicated with channels dedicated to to atmospheres. So that was the first part. And then the other thing besides percussion and vocals that I was using the black box for was subs. So for example, I would have stuff like this. Let's see here. So something like this that I could put underneath a kick. Let's do a regular 4/4 kick. Right, so that gives a lot of body to the kick. So if I was to take that out, that's just the kick by itself. But then when I add back in that sub, if you're listening on headphones or on good speakers, you'll be able to hear it a little better. So yeah, so being able to do those subs was really important. So now what I found myself able to do is I started messing around with how I used to sequence subs, and started doing stuff here in the, lower this down, in the Digitone 2. So you hear I've got sort of a sequenced 16th note. You know, if you look at the pattern, it's, here, I'll show you from above. If you look at the pattern, it's just straight 16th notes, but it's also being sidechained because I'm able to do that with this new setup. One of the things with the board brain mixer, there's a module under here, which I'm sure you can't see because it's underneath all the cables. It's called the IO, and it connects to the back of the mixer with ribbon cables. So it gives me pre-fader and post-fader outputs of all of my channels in here. So I'm taking a pre-fader kick output from that, running that into the left input on the Digitone. And then if you go to the compressor settings, you'll see where you can select your sidechain input. And I've selected the input left. So it's this kick drum that's coming in to trigger the sidechain in here. And then if you go into your audio settings, audio routing, and you click on 2 main, you can choose which tracks of this go out the main. If you go to the second page, you get your left and right inputs and your send effects. So if you notice, I took the left out of the audio routing. So basically what ends up happening is that signal comes in, triggers the side chain, and then it never goes anywhere in the audio chain. So I don't have to have something in here triggering it and whatever. And what that allows me to do as well is that if I change up my kick drum pattern, I'm still side chaining to the kick, just the same way that I would, you know, in a DAW, doing a proper side chain. It's not just a sequenced duck, and it's not just an LFO or an envelope ducking. It's an actual side chain that's being triggered from the actual kick. So if I go from a 4/4 kick to a breakbeat kick, that kick within here will still trigger the side chain. And because I have this set up as 16th notes, wherever it moves in that pattern based on where the side chain is, will duck the correct 16th note. So if you take it all the way off, it's just straight 16th notes. I did put a little bounce in it. So like the 3, 11, 7, and 15 are a little higher velocity, just so it gets an offbeat bounce. But the side chain actually ducks whichever 16th note it hits on. So as I change that up, it keeps it pretty close, pretty accurate. So that allows me to and then using within the Digitone 2, I've got 2 filters. So I'm using a comb filter to get a little bit more grit on it. But on the other filter, the bass width, I basically turned it into a bandwidth. So now I can move that. And I can decide which frequencies I want to emphasize with this kind of low end sub. So I can bring it way, way down and have it sound more like a sub. I can extend out the decay and have it sound more like a sub, or I can change that filter up and make it sound more like a rumble, right? So it gives me a few different options with that. Sorry. So because I have now sub and rumble sounding the way I like it in here, and atmosphere sounding the way I like it here in the case, it kind of took out 2 of the things that I was using loops for in the black box. And so now I just need really some percussion loops and some random vocals, which I don't use very often. And so because of that, I think I'll be able to put a Bitbox Micro and get a kind of similar effect. All right, let's see what's in the chat. Sounds like Alexandre and Mathieu know each other. My guess is that they are French based on those names. Got the Bitbox Micro, love it. Yeah, I had the regular Bitbox for a while. It took up a little too much space. I love the black box, so I just kind of switched back and got rid of the Bitbox. But I think the Bitbox Micro is kind of my thing. So I need a lot less tracks because I'm only doing a couple things with it. So this will definitely help me out. How do I fly with all these HP? So I will show you. Let's see, I think, well, I should just be able to move this and still flip it. So this case is foldable. So if you take a look, it all folds down just like this. It stays patched the whole time. And then I can just open it up and plug it in and we're good to go. So because of that, it comes with a carrying case, which I brought it in, which can go as a regular hand luggage, regular carry-on. It was a bit of a pain because I had it on a shoulder strap and it was really heavy. So I found a rolling carry-on that I can fit this into. I could fit it into mine, except since it's a rigid one, when I tried to close it down, the lid, because it's coming at an angle, was hitting on the corner of the box. Like the interior measurements were correct, but it wasn't enough to get it closed. So I found another one that I can get closed, and that's how I'll be traveling with this. So this will be my rolling carry-on, this with a bunch of cables and all that kind of stuff. And then the rest of the boxes go in my backpack personal item when I travel. So yes, that's how I do it. Texture is everything. I totally agree with you. Chris Lima, what's going on, Chris? Bonjour. We got all the French people in here today. Awesome. All my kicks have rumble too from the sample. Yeah, it's like, I go back and forth about kick, rumble, sub, all that stuff because I do feel like it's a bit overused, so I try not to use it all the time. And it's one thing that I really love with the battering ram. So if I just use this, because the decay on this sounds so good, I can get a really tight kick like this, or I can just extend the decay and it gives me still a punchy kick, but with a long decay that kind of fills up that low end rather than having to have a sub, because sometimes a sub and a rumble can get really muddy, particularly on a big system. And so I like having it this way. But if I do want to use that rumble thing, I can then tighten this back up, eliminate the decay here, and replace it with this. Right, so it kind of gives me options, so I can play back and forth. So I can do, this rumble can be either rumble or sub, and this can be either really tight, snappy kicks, or they can be kind of boomier. So I would say it's like, you know, when the kick is like this, it's more kind of 909-y. And then when you start to add it, it's like if you were mixing it with an 808. You know, and if I turn down the attack and I turn up the boom, it can get pretty 808-y as well. Especially if I tune it up. Right. So it gives you a lot of options. This module in particular gives a ton of options, but then when you pair it with something like having the rumble over here, it's yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility with that. Let's see, what else do we have in the chat here? Careful, I was peaking when the music and the voice are simultaneous. Okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know that. We'll take this down just a little. Hopefully you can still hear everything well. Mikey, hello, what's going on? Thanks for breaking down the sidechain setup. Oh, for sure. Oh, and that reminds me, one other thing that I wanted to show you, I did another thing, and I actually did this like the night before I left to LA. I had an idea. You know, sidechain is always a challenge, and you know, compression in general in a live rig is really difficult to make work unless you're sidechaining. But even with that, sidechaining a lot of modules can be really difficult and trying to figure it out. And do you do it with multiple different compressors, or do you try to sidechain your whole thing, or whatever? It can get really complicated. And so I wanted to be able to selectively sidechain, which with the the Digitone 2, one of the super cool things in this is you can go into the setups here and go to compressor routing, and then you can select what tracks you want to have be impacted by the sidechain or by the compressor. So for example, I took out a whole bunch of the high the high elements, so like cymbals and claps and things like that, because I don't want them to duck, because I don't need to duck that. But I left in my low end stuff, so my rumble, toms, and then any melodic things that would have some low end. So that gives me sidechain only in the things I want and not on the other things. Now, the hard thing is in Modular to try and get that same thing to happen. So what I did was the battering ram has an output for an envelope. So you can output the envelope that you're using. So it's basically you're outputting just the envelope of the kick. And you can press the button and make it an inverted envelope. So it ducks rather than spiking when you hit that envelope moment. I put that into an attenuator here. And then from the attenuator, I went out to a multiple. And that multiple is now going to the volume CV input on every channel of the mixer. And so, and I have volume CV on all of the peripherals to the mixer and everything. So basically everything can have that inverted envelope signal sent here. So now when I turn up the attenuator and start to drive that inverted envelope more and more prominently, it's ducking in the VCAs that are inside the mixer. It's ducking those just as if it was a compressor, but it's not a compressor. It's just turning it down using an envelope and the VCAs. And because the way this mixer is, every channel has a VCA, and those VCAs can be set up to work either instead of the fader or in conjunction with the fader. So I have it set up right now to work in conjunction with the fader. So I can do things like, I'll turn that down. So if let's say I turn up something bassy like that. Now, if I was to turn up this attenuator, you'll hear the duck that comes from that envelope that's coming out of the kick. And because it's coming out pre-fader, or it's coming out, I mean, obviously pre-fader because it's coming out of the module itself, that ducking actually comes whether or not the kick is in, which is great because you can continue the pumping going during a breakdown and things. So listen as I bring this up. So I can get it really high or take it down and have it be much more subtle. It does have a little bit of a click in it because it is an envelope, so it's really kind of an attack envelope. And so if I turn down the attack on the transient on the envelope here, it helps a little bit. But it's still there a little bit. So it's not perfect, but in my mixes, it actually kind of gets buried a lot because there's a lot of things going on. So that click is not really coming through. If I was gonna record, I wouldn't record using this sidechain. I would do a sidechain in the DAW rather than doing it here. But for live, it suffices. And that allows me to do that on every single channel just by splitting it with a multiple and then controlling the amount of sidechain pump with the attenuator. So there's just a different solution to try to get to that kind of pumping effect that we all love so much in dance music. So let's see what else. Hope I'll see you at Super Booth 25. You will. I will be there for sure. I'm coming to Berlin early. I have a gig on the 1st in Berlin. So I will be there a week before Super Booth and be there through that time. So hope with this rig, yes, this rig will be the rig that I bring with me, unless something changes between now and then, which does happen sometimes. Yo, greetings from Mexico. Awesome. Where are you in Mexico? Have we had this conversation before? I think we might have actually, but cool. I used to live in Mexico. That's why I asked. Yeah, envelopes can be used for ducking too. Something I learned in the DAW. Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of like a cool workaround in here because you don't need a ton of extra gear, ton of extra expensive modules. Like attenuators are relatively cheap, and then it's just going through a really cheap multiple. And so to be able to go into that, but the trick is you need to have either a mixer that has a VCA per channel, which is not every mixer, and it has to be able to work in conjunction with the faders, so you're not like ducking all the way down to zero. You can still keep your level up and just duck a bit off the top. So you need to have that in your mixer, and it also needs to having the VCA as inside the mixer as well is also something that will allow you to not have to have a VCA per voice. So if you notice in my case, pretty much everything, like I don't have a single VCA in my case other than the mixer, because what I choose to use just to save space for my live rig is I choose to use whole voices. So, everything that's in here acts as an entire voice. Some things need a filter, some things don't even need that. So like the bass line, full voice, polycinematic, swarm, BIA is a whole voice minus a filter. Battering ram and archer's rig, both full voices. The pizza is a full voice minus the filter. So that saves me not having to have VCAs and envelopes, because those all have envelopes in them as well, as a full voice. And it really saves me a ton of space in my case, so then I can add in other things. And then having those VCAs in the mixer, again, just an added bonus so that you don't have to have them and you can still get the same type of effects, rather than having to have a VCA per voice and then send the multiple to the VCA that's per voice. So it does save a lot of space. And in return also saves a lot of money because you don't have to buy VCAs for everything. So, yes. Hey, Michael, what's going on? Sheet controller is a nice little replacement for the Novation controller you used to use. I got the Faderfox MX12 as a virtual performance fixture for my laptop and a PC12 for a performance controller. Yeah, I have a PC12 over there. It's just too big to travel with. So having the Chic is great because it's tiny. Here, I'll bring it into the frame here so you can see. Like if you're familiar with the size of the Oxy One, it's tiny compared with that. So it's a very small controller with 32 knobs, really easy to use as far as setting it up and assigning those knobs to things. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Thanks for sharing so much of your setup and process. No problem. Any thoughts on the new Melbourne Instruments Roto controller? Yeah, I actually have lots of thoughts on that. So I will let you know of everything that I saw that weekend as far as like NAMM and the Buchla and Friends event. My favorite thing that I saw the whole time was that Melbourne Instruments controller. It is, I've never seen anything that does what it does, especially not in such a complete and really kind of user-friendly way. And then on top of it, they're selling it for $419, which blew me away. When they were running through all the things that it could do, my assumption was going to be that it was going to be like $750-ish. And so when they said $400, I was like, you guys are insane. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. So there's a chance, depending on if I can get my hands on one, that you may see that in my live setup instead of the Chic, because you can set it up to control a whole bunch of different things at the same time in your setup. So when they were demoing it at the show, Honey Smack was there doing the demos, and he had it set up with Ableton, a modular rig through MIDI to CV conversion, and a Synth. And he had the controller set up controlling all of them, and he could just toggle back and forth between pages. And when you went to one page, the knobs would all snap to whatever the controls were for that device, and the screens would all change underneath that would say what the device was. So you could really easily toggle back and forth and see exactly what you wanted. And then if you were to, let's say you were to move a filter cutoff like on the Synth, and that was one of your parameters on the MIDI controller. As you move it on the Syntac, the knob moves on the MIDI controller as well. So it's always in sync with whatever the functionality is inside the device that you have it mapped to. And the integration with Ableton was pretty mind-blowing as well. You can set it up with any of the Ableton internal plugins, the like stock plugins that come with Ableton. You can set up the MIDI controller to control parameters within that. And then anytime you open an instance of that plugin in, a new track or on another track or in a new song that you're working on, as soon as you open it up, the controller remembers it because it's remembering the MIDI mapping in the controller to the plugin rather than in Ableton. So you don't have to use the Ableton map function and then map a controller to that. You're actually mapping, you're remembering everything within the controller. And as you learn things between Ableton and the controller, it does really cool like quality of life workflow things. Like it pulls in the name of the track and the color of the track that you have assigned in Ableton, and it reassigns it in the screen. So it just makes it so that the connection between the two devices is really logical, that it makes a ton of sense. So yeah, I was blown away by that controller. It was the coolest thing I saw the whole thing. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Let's see here. What would you pair it with in your setup? So my thought was I could have a couple different pages within it because it has 8 knobs and 8 buttons per kind of whatever preset page, or I don't remember what they have them called. So I would use, I would maybe have a 1 through 8 and a 9 through 16 page for the digitone, where I could control things like filter cutoff or things like that, which would be super handy to have. Rather than going into menus in here while I'm playing live, I could just have them all set up there. I could also use it for mixing in the digitone. Rather than going to the mixing page and toggling back and forth, I could just go back and forth between a couple of mixing pages, which would be really good. The 1010 Black Box, and ultimately the Bitbox Micro, if I get one of those in there, I would use for all the same things that I'm using the Chic controller for, which is volume per track and pitch per track, so that I can make sure that things line up more or less pitch-wise with what I'm doing. So having all of that capability in one, then ultimately, let's say I was to bring the Oxy Choral back into my live rig, I could control that via MIDI as well. So I could have the 8 channels of the Choral be the 8 channels in the MIDI controller, and I can control things like volume or filter cutoff or effect sends, because the Choral has reverb and chorus and delay. So I could set up those in there. I could set it up to control parameters of the different effects engine, or the different synth engines in the Choral. So one of the challenges with using the Choral Live is that it's really difficult to get in and move things and kind of edit things on the fly. But having all that mapped to a MIDI controller where you could just quickly change page and then just change things would be amazingly helpful. So yeah, there's a lot of places where I could definitely use it in my setup. And for the size, I mean, it was tiny. It was really small. The graphics were great on the screens, the screen quality, and obviously the price was crazy good. So yeah, it was the star of the show for me, for sure. What else? Yeah, it does look sick. I was definitely wondering about how to use the buttons. Yeah, I mean, you can really assign them to anything. So you can assign them as any kind of a toggle. So you can go, you could have it be a mute, unmute. You could have it activate things. You can set it to parameters and say, like, when I click this, it jumps to this parameter. The knobs as well. Another really cool thing with the knobs, because they're kind of endless encoders and they have these little magnets in them that provide resistance, you can set them up to be a smooth sweep knob. So like if you're looking at something like sweeping a filter, that would be a smooth sweep. But you can also set it up with set kind of spots where it feels like it clicks. And you can set, I can't remember how many, I think crazy number, with however many clicks you want. So for example, in Modular, if you wanted to control it to change to different start points in a complex sample, or even like in an octatrack. Let's say you did a multi-sample and you wanted to be able to select different kick drums within a sample that had like a bunch of different kicks. You could have each one of those be a click within the knob rather than having to do the sweep and like find exactly the sweet spot. It just allows you to do it really quick. So that was another really fun thing about that. So super flexible. It was amazing. What else? Any other questions? Just pop them in the chat here. I'll be happy to get to those. And yeah, in the meantime, I'll show you a little bit about some of the stuff that I've been working with, and see how things sound here. So love having this BIA now for these atmospheres. Being able to get things like the swarm back in here again is also very cool. All right. Well, that's that for a little bit. Figured I'd check back in with the chat now that I've gotten a chance to jam out a little bit. Let's see what's here. All right. Backstreet Boys. Yeah, why not? From Baja, but live in, oh, you live in the DF. My wife is from the DF. Anyone for raffle tickets? Cool jam. Thanks. You dance like this. Nice. A little harsh. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard once I start adding things in because it's going in through my mixer and then out from my mixer into one of the cameras and then from the camera into the iPad and then from the iPad to the streaming. So yeah, gain staging can be a pain, but I appreciate the feedback because I never want it to sound awful. Sounds okay. Okay, good. Well, I guess it's just some people. Bit of breakup on the kick. Yeah, the kick's a little powerful. Want to have all the stuff. Don't we all? Massive hypno. Sweet. So deep. Sweet. Do I have any double track Digitone 2 voices set up? No, I haven't actually been using that as much. I've been using it in production stuff because it's nice to take the time and set it up. It takes a little bit too much time in the moment playing live to get it set up, and then I forget what has multiple voices, and if I try to mute something and I don't mute all the voices. So live it doesn't work as well as it does for production. So I have been using it for production but not for live. Hey, thanks Herbie, good to see you in LA, by the way. Herbie was at the Buchla and Friends event as well. Hit that like button. Yeah, man. Cool sounds. Thanks, Vincent. I bet you're making cool sounds with that cool synth you won. That looked pretty awesome. I saw that online. A little jealous. It's a fun synth, that Hydra synth. Cool, cool. Let me know if you have any questions. One of the reasons why I wanted to play a little bit was to show a little bit of how I'm using stuff. And so that way, if you have any questions about any of the stuff that I'm using, if you want me to show you something in particular, like if there's something that's like, you know, you liked the sound or didn't like the sound, or you were curious about how it was made or whatever, definitely let me know. Definitely let me know. Let's see, what cameras am I using? So you can probably see from that view, you can see this one right here, this little box. So they are the Mevo cameras from Logitech, and I bought a pack of 3 of them. So I have 1, 2, and that one that you're seeing me on up there. And they come with this free iPad app that you can use to switch back and forth like this. So I can, you know, change different views. And then you can record in to your iPad directly, or you can send this out. You just connect it to your YouTube or your Twitch or whatever, and you can send this out live from that and use this as a switch. So it's kind of like OBS Lite that's made for the iPad. It also works on your phone as well. So if you want to do them that way, and the cameras are USB-C charged, but they're battery powered. So if you get them charged up, I think they run for about 2 hours, maybe 3. And so it's pretty cool. And then they also, each one of them has a micro SD card in it. So if you're not able to connect to a sound source and record from there, you can actually record audio and video directly into the camera, which is pretty cool. And they have a 3.5 millimeter input, stereo input TRS on each camera. So that's how this is working, is this whole rig is going through the analog heat, and then that's going into this mixer right here, and that's where I'm adding my voice to it. And then I have a sub mix coming out of the mixer going into this camera, and then that's the audio that's being broadcast through there. So that's that setup. So now you know the performance setup and the camera setup for everything. So yeah, feel free to jump in the chat and ask any questions you have. I'm happy to answer whatever. I just wanted to show a little bit of the new rig, the new setup, and kind of how I'm using it. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about, the case, this new case that I just recently got is from Modular. It's actually a prototype of their next case that's going to be coming out. It has a different power supply setup, and I'm testing it out. And so far, it's been great. I really like it. It's the bag was a little bit of a pain to carry around just because it was heavy. The whole thing with all the modules in it is probably 20 pounds, and so having that on one shoulder plus a heavy backpack at the same time was not the most comfortable for cruising around the airport, but it is convenient, that it can just fold up, travel patched. And, I always kind of look at how the gear all kind of works together and not like any individual piece as one thing. And one thing that is really, that works really well together is having with the Oxy One connected to the Oxy pipe. So the pipe can leave all of my CV gates patched. So my entire case stays completely patched while I travel. And then when I roll up to play a show, this is the only cable that I need to connect. I just connect up this HDMI cable, and then all my CV and gate are all connected and working properly. So that's pretty amazing, to be able to do that, to be able to connect in, and have all of this stay patched. And then again, just being able to fold this up, like you can see, fold it up. It has a handle for carrying on the other side, and it stays folded up like that. And then when you get there, you just take it out of the case, unfold it, connect that one cable, connect your power, and you're good to go. And then also the only other things that I have to connect from here is I have a stereo in coming from the Digitone 2. I have my audio in from the black box, and then I have these two 1/4-inch outs that are going out to the analog heat. So setup is really super fast. It's like power MIDI, and then like the modular part is like the quickest part of the setup, which is generally not the case. So it's really handy to have that all working that way. So let's see. How did I design the hi-hats? Actually, what I did was I just used some of the loaded like presets for hi-hats and then started tweaking them because they didn't sound great, but at least it gets you kind of into the ballpark. So here, I'll go to the overhead view. So basically if you go in, it's using the FM drum engine, which is a great engine in here because it gives you a lot more kind of percussive control, if that makes sense. So like envelopes and depth and stuff like that. So I just did that. A little bit of feedback. I kind of distorted the signal, the waves of the signal a little bit. And then a little bit of sweep time. And then pitched it up. And then it was just a matter of going into filter, and it's filtered way, way up, which that can change. So here, so you can hear this. So that's the way it is right now, but if I filter it down, it does change the character quite a bit. And I like to find, like, if you get it too high, it just gets really weak, I find. And if you get it too low, it doesn't really sound like a hat anymore. So there's kind of like a sweet spot to find in there. And then it's all about envelopes and envelope length. And then I add some overdrive just to give it a little bit more distortion and grit to the noise that's in there. But yeah, that's that one. And then the other one is the FM tone engine. And this one's really just more about filter. Like if you filter it all the way down, this is the sound. But once you bring that filter up, you can get to a pretty solid hat sound if you get some decent resonance in there. And again, a little bit of reverb, a little bit of overdrive to give it some grit. Something else that I've been using a lot now with the Digitone 2 is if you go to this page, the effects mixer page, there's a master overdrive in this machine that it makes all the difference now with these digital engines to make them sound better. So like if I take that all the way off, that's the sound. And if I bring it up just to like 8, is where I generally keep it. it gives you just enough grit to make it sound good. And this goes all the way up to 127, so I could make it crazy, but that gets to be a little too much as kind of a master overdrive because it distorts things a little bit too much. But just being able to have things like this low end without the overdrive and then with, and then if you were to jack this up, it gives you a ton of boost. But just being able to add just a little bit of that in, even with so you can see it can give you some really fat sounds. Yeah, so this doesn't really sound like a typical FM engine, which this is the FM tone engine. And a lot of that's because of the overdrive and some of the effects as well. But then you can do things like bit reduction and sample rate reduction. So you can get a lot of those kind of imperfections in the sound that you don't normally get with FM. And so like those are those things that makes FM sound really kind of metallic and almost too precise. And it was the main reason why I didn't like the original Digatone, is because the FM just always sounded like FM. It was really hard to kind of, rough it up a little. It always sounded like too clear, too precise. And I like a little bit grittier sounds, and it was a lot harder to do that in the old one. With this one, you still have the same engine, so you can still do it as much as you always could, but then you can add things like the master overdrive, and you've got multiple effects and the bit reduction, sample rate reduction, all that stuff can kind of grit things up a little bit and make them sound a little bit, give them some more imperfections and make it sound less like a digital FM synthesizer and something that can be more, more interesting, I think, because I think those digital sounds can get pretty boring over time. So anyway, just bought the pizza, how you set it up in your Oxy, use the control. Yeah, so I basically have the way I have the pizza set up, you can take the control knob on the bottom and you can set it up as a decay or basically as the envelope. So when you take it to the right, it's a sharp attack and it extends the decay. If you take it to the left, it is a slower attack and a longer decay. So you get a bit of control. So like, let's see. I'll take the effects off so you can just hear the thing by itself. So that's like no decay. And then if you start to take it to the right, and then if you take it to the left, and back to the middle. And that's all kind of sounding weird just because of the way the index is working. That's going to the right and then back to the left. And then you get a lot of control with the two sliders as well. So like I like to use the lower one on wave shape. So as you slide that, it changes up the shape of the wave that's frequency modulating the first one. And then on the first one, you can change up the FM index. Can make it sound real FM-y. And very much like what I was talking about with the Digatone too, FM tones can be really cool and a lot of fun to mess around with, but they always have that kind of metallic sound. So that's why I put it through the carbon filter, because that filter adds a little bit of harmonic distortion. So it's pretty cool because you can kind of, and it's got a drive as well, actually. So like, so if you've got it like this, you can really drive the distortion if you want to, or you can take it off and just let it be more passive. But for me, it's a great complement for an FM voice. So you've got a voice that's really super crisp and precise and clean, and then you've got a filter that can kind of dirty things up a little bit, which I think all my filters are like that. I like filters that have like wave folders and FM and all that kind of stuff to make it sound a bit grittier, so it's not too clean. Let's see here. Excited for the class to start next week. Oh, sweet. Awesome. Oh, that's right. Mikey, you're in it too. So yeah, just to let you guys know, the next session of both of my classes start next week. One of them is for Improvise performance. So hardware performance like this, like what I do, setting up a system, getting your gear set up, how you do, how you select voices, how you decide what kind of sounds you're going to make, how you organize it and structure it, sequencing, writing melodies, transitioning, all that kind of stuff. So that's the performance course. And then there's also a hybrid production course, which is using a live setup with a DAW and being able to use this as a production writing tool, rather than just kind of recording your stereo outs and kind of hoping it goes well. Being able to multi-track, use individual voices to do certain things, send voices into the DAW, process them there, write things in the DAW, create samples with that to bring back into sample players like the Black Box. And so it's kind of about using hardware for production and using production for hardware, and kind of going back and forth between the two. Lots of fun. And the course goes for 4 weeks. You get about 50 videos that are not any videos that are on YouTube. So you get 50 exclusive videos per course, and you can watch those at your own pace. And then as far as the actual interactive part of the course, there is 4 weeks of twice weekly group calls. So every Wednesday and every Sunday, we do an hour-long Zoom call with everybody that's in the course, and you can do question and answer about whatever that section of the course is. It's broken up into 8 sections. So whatever the section is, we do Q&A. I can help you through things. I can show you, demonstrations of things if you have questions about a little more detail of whatever was in that section. And then you also get a 1 hour one-on-one with me that you can schedule via Zoom anytime you want. And so that's always a good one as well. And then there's a online group for anybody who has taken the courses. So it's kind of steadily growing. So you can go on there and network with other people who've taken the course and ask questions and share your live sets. And it's not like a shit posters group where everybody talks about how bad your setup is. It's like all people who are into hardware live performance, and so they've kind of invested in getting better at this, and so it's everybody who's kind of in the same scenario that you are, which is pretty cool. And then what's the last bit? Oh, the last bit is individual feedback. So every week you can send in a 10-minute video of you performing for the performance class, or you can send in your most recent production for the production class, and I send you back feedback via email. So all that's included in the courses. The next session starts next Thursday. I think it goes live, if I'm not wrong, the 6th it goes live. And then the first of the weekly Zoom calls is a week from today. So you've got about a week to sign up. There's a discount right now. If you put in 2025 as the discount code when you sign up, it's 25% off of any of the course. And if you're not interested in doing the full course with all the interactive stuff and the group and the Zoom calls and all that stuff, there's a video only version of both of the courses that's also available on my website. So there's a link to that in the description of this video. And there's also, you can just go to my website, which is circolive.com/courses, and that will take you to where you need to go. So if you're already signed up as Mikey and Levi are, I'm pretty excited. If not, if you'd like to sign up, definitely jump in there and get signed up now. I would love to have you on there. And their signups are live right now for the February course, which is just about to start. And now you can also sign up for the March course. If you don't want to do it right now, reserve your place for the March course as well. Let's see here. My left signal is heavily distorted. Interesting. Because I'm seeing on my side, they're both showing up exactly the same as the output. Wonder why. Maybe it was coming from the pizza. Who knows? Why did I lose the rhythm? I didn't lose the rhythm. It's actually right behind me over there. It's just too big to travel with. And so I took it out of my live rig because I can get what I need to drum-wise from my case and from the smaller Electron boxes. So I didn't need it. I would love to, because I love to play it. I love the form factor. I love the way it plays, but it was just too big to travel with. I didn't have the space for it. So now it's a studio tool. What else? Here, just letting everyone know your paid for lessons are excellent. Oh, thanks, man. Setup is rocking. Sweet. Love to hear that. Yeah, the feedback has been great. I mean, I really appreciate everybody who's been in the classes and been in the lessons. And, you know, it's been so awesome to see everybody kind of develop, no matter what kind of rig you have, no matter where you are. You know, we have people that are performing live all the time, like professional gigs. And we have people who are just starting out using their first groove box. And the courses are really applicable to everything. So I'm excited to get the new one started, but it's been really awesome to see everybody in kind of how they've come along and how they've developed. It's been pretty awesome. So thank you guys all. Got a show at the end of the month. Looking forward to the class kicking me into gear. Sweet. Look forward to talking about that. Yeah, we've had a couple guys from the last session. One guy just had a show last night and posted a bunch of his videos online. Another guy is designing his own modular stuff, which is really interesting the way it works. And he had a show a couple nights ago that was a demo for that in Dubai, which was pretty cool. So I'm excited for that. Course was dope. Thanks, Herbie. Highly recommend. Thanks, man. Yeah, so Mikey and Levi, I think you guys are both going to be in the same cohort. So you guys will be seeing each other on the Zoom calls, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but check any other questions you have in the chat. I would love to chat about any of this stuff, or anything that I saw at Buchla and Friends or NAMM, or anything that's in the setup or maybe not in the setup, like with the case with the analog rhythm. Sometimes I take things out of the performance rig, but they stay here. Very much like this big, huge modular that's right here. This is all things that are modules that I really love. I love to use for sound design, for making sounds, for production, but a lot of them just are either too big or they don't really lend themselves to live performance, because they take a long time to dial in and they're not super immediate. And everything that kind of makes its way into this case has a lot of variety of sound in each individual element, and it's really immediate to dial in to get to new sounds, because I need that in the whole kind of improvisational world. So, you know, I have, you know, for example, like the DPO oscillator, I absolutely love. I love the sound of it. I love what it can do, but it takes a long time to dial it in to get it to sound just right. And because I don't kind of pre-set up everything and then just use it one way during the live shows, it just doesn't lend itself to that. So I need things that I can, you know, kind of in the dark with my eyes closed, I can dial in to make them sound like something that I like. So that determines what makes it into this live setup versus what's in the broader studio setup here. So that is why. Your channel and videos have been a significant part of my live journey. Thank you. Awesome. That is so good to hear. I love hearing that. I love when when people let me know that. I had somebody actually, it was such a great feeling. The show that I played in LA during Buchla and Friends, the guy who was the opener for that show came up and said that he had been watching my videos to learn how to play live, and that he was watching some of my videos to get ready for that show, which was really cool to think that he was using that as kind of an inspiration to get ready for the show that we were going to then both end up playing the same show. So that was super fun, and I love to hear it. I love to see everybody kind of develop and improve and get better. And I've been seeing all kinds of it. So thank you guys. Thanks for taking the course. It's been a lot of fun. All right, what else? What else? Any other questions? Let's see what time is it. All right, so that's some time here. Cool. Yeah, so just another, we can kind of quick chat a little bit more about what's going on here and why I made some of the changes. So, you know, with the board brain mixer, having 2 sends is great, but I didn't just want to stick to kind of the generic, you know, reverb delay, which would be kind of the normal way to do 2 sends. So then everything's got a reverb and everything's got a delay. So I wanted it to be a little bit more unique. So I have the Endorphins Ghost on one, which, let's see here. Cool. So if I just bring in something like the Archer's Rig, so like something just basic like that, but then I send it through the Endorphins Ghost, this is what you get. So you can see you get a lot of fill-in of everything with some cool effects that move around and all that stuff. And being able to do that on multiple channels at once. So like, let's say I'm using the pizza again. So this is that dry pizza signal. If I send this through the Ghost, and then with the Ghost, I have it set up as a bandpass filter with a bunch of resonance, so that if I sweep that, I can pick out different harmonics. Right, so it just gives you a lot of options for atmospheric stuff. So that's on my FX2 send. My FX1 send is actually a pre-fader send, so the fader doesn't even have to be up for that to work. And that goes to the Coslin frequency shifter and then through a filter and then back into another channel over here. So let's use that same basic sound from the pizza. Now if I bring if I bring the Coslin up, right? You're not hearing anything yet because I haven't started to send this, but now if I send this, so you can start to hear kind of the duplicated sound, but it's not really shifted the frequency. Now if I shift the frequency, now, what's interesting is because it's pre-fader, I don't even have to have the fader up in the original sound. So I can just have only the frequency shifted sound without the original. Now, the other thing, the reason why this is cool on a send is because I can send little bits of other channels to it as well. Right, so let's say I'll send the Swarm that's just playing one note. And then I'll send that Archer's Rig that we were listening to before. And then you can start to frequency shift. Right? So it creates a whole new voice out of the pieces that you already have in the setup. And again, it's without having to bring the fader up. So maybe you can have your fader up, send it so that it works, and then you can fade out the main section and bring in a whole new section, and that thing is still playing in the background, so it allows for some continuity as you transition from one section of your live performance to another. So that's how I'm using the two effect sends, just to have them do something a little bit more unique. Now, because of that, I didn't have things like delays and reverbs. And so what I opted to do now that I have the bigger case is to have individual delays and reverbs as insert effects for the voices where I feel like it's important. So the polycinematic, for example, this has its own built-in reverb. So that's dry. So I didn't need one for there. The bass line, I very rarely would affect my bass, so I don't have any effects there. But then, oh, and the kick as well. I don't have any effects on the kick because I like that the way it is. But the Archer's rig lends itself really well to effects. So let's see here. So like that's just by itself. It does have some internal effects as well. But like, and so I have it going through the FXAid XL, so I can use both of the effects here. So I can do reverb, and I've also got a delay. Right, so I can send just that sound through this individual effect. Similar thing with the pizza. I have it going through an FXAid as well. So we can have this basic one. So that's the insert effects. Then you can also add to that the ghost. And before you know it, you've really filled out your track just using some pretty simple effects, as long as they're kind of in the right spot. So this is all that's making that whole sound, is just this dry tone. Same thing with the swarm. So I have this one. Clean this sound up just a little bit. There we go. So this is going through the Erica Synth's dual effects. So I have a delay side, and I have a reverb side. It's kind of the aggressive reverb, I think it's called, or whatever. So then I can put those two together. And again, that's just coming from a single note. So having those individual insert effects can be really important. So I prefer to do that and use those effects for sound design, shaping the sound of an individual instrument, rather than having the delay and reverb on sends and kind of pushing everything through it. I think the sends work really well with the ghost and the frequency shifter. So that's kind of why I have this set up this way. And now that I have this XI3 module, the new one from BoardBrain, being able to run my my digitone in through there, I can also use the effects. So here, let's see if I bring in, what do I want to bring in? Let's use it. Okay. Also dramatic. Okay, this one's pretty simple. So if I've got a simple sound like this coming in, I can then also send to the ghost. Right, and I can send to the Coslin. Here. Right, so it gives me the option to do that with my external instruments, process them through my same effects in here, or I can do that with any of the internal stuff. So pretty compact setup, but one that has a ton of flexibility to be able to do a whole bunch of unique and different things. So let's see here. Hey Keith, what's going on? Let's talk about music is like to dance with architecture. Cool. Thanks. I don't know. Yeah, okay, it works. Now for some music. Oh, I didn't realize this was a request show. Yeah, so this is actually a live stream where we chat about stuff, where we ask questions, where I walk people through things, where I show things and demonstrate them. And there's a bit of music in there too, but this is not the music live streams. I do those as well, and there's actually plenty of those on the channel, and I may end up doing one of those later where it's just a performance. But this one is hopefully I can help people who may be struggling with issues that they may be having with their live setup, or learning something new and being able to answer questions rather than the way a lot of people do it, where they just make you feel stupid for asking questions. I would rather help people out and answer questions any way I can. So yeah, so that's how that works. Yeah, so if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And yeah, I'm happy to answer whatever. Anything's about the rig, any of the gear that I have here, or that I have had, or if you have questions about something that you're thinking about getting, let me know, and I can hopefully point you in the right direction, or let you know kind of what things do and what they don't do, to help you guys avoid spending money you don't need to spend and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so let's see what else. Yeah, so feel free to put any of those in the chat. Happy to answer any of those questions you may have. And otherwise, I'll walk through a little something that I was working on before, which should be kind of cool. Take that out. Cool, cool. All right, let's see if we got any more questions on here. Right. Very cool seeing the effects routing all dialed to blend too. Yeah, it's been, I'm excited with how it worked out. Like I was just thinking like, okay, what do I want to do inserts for? What do I have space for? What do I have modules for? Because I didn't want to buy a bunch of new modules. So yeah, it's been really cool to kind of get that all sorted and figured out and running the way I want it to, which I've been very happy with. Let's see. Notice a big difference in the power of my kick, the battering ram, when going from mono to stereo. Are you stereo out, and does this issue sound familiar? I know we discussed most clubs being mono. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a mono device, so even though it's coming in stereo, it's still going to go out stereo because I don't have any effects on it. So if you're not processing it all, it's going to be mono in, mono out, no matter how you're sending it, even if you're sending it on a stereo channel to a stereo out, unless you're affecting it with an effect that's stereo, and then that will change things. That could be the difference could be in your mixer. Let's see. It depends. Are you so you're saying the mono signal is strong until it copies it to the right channel, stereo. Yeah, so I mean, it could be a couple different things. If it's what you probably are dealing with is phasing. So if you've got maybe the two signals are slightly off, so that one is one is on the up cycle of the waveform while the other is on the down, and that will phase cancel, and it'll make it so that it sounds like it dips in volume. That's most likely the issue when you have things that don't sound good in stereo, is probably because they're canceling. Now, this can also happen in mono. Like if you take a stereo device and you send it into something, and then that sums to mono, if those two signals are slightly off and slightly out of phase, then that can cancel out the phase as well. So I would, kind of go with it however works the best for you, because it's not, without being able to kind of dig into it, there's not a lot you can do with it. And when it's modular, it's really hard. Like being able to fix phase issues in modular is a really difficult thing, because you would have to you'd have to get modules specifically for adjusting the phase and for each channel. And so it becomes a pain. So I would just say, use it whichever way sounds better. And yeah, I mean, that would be my advice on that. Yeah, so Keith said, if you're summing it together to get mono, that might explain it. Because I mean, the idea of summing to phase cancel is like you've got one waveform that's going up, down, and you've got another one that's maybe going down, up. And so it's telling the speaker to go in and out at the same time. And so the speaker will just stop. Or those things will sum together, and you might be telling it to go, up in amplitude by 5 volts and down in amplitude by, because of where it is on the waveform, maybe only 2 volts. And so instead of going up 5 and down 2, those kind of cancel each other. So it will only go up 3. So it'll sound less loud if those get summed together, if they're slightly out of phase. And so that would be my guess. That's what I would check out with that first and foremost. Let's see here. What about using a DI box? Is that for me or for Jim? I'm not sure how a DI box would fix his problem, but for me, I don't generally use a DI box for a bunch of different reasons. One, first of all, because I am pretty much set up to do 1/4-inch outs coming out of the Analog Heat Plus effects. And so I don't generally need a DI box. If the house needs an XLR input, they will usually have a DI box, because they know that most instrument setups are going to come out like that. I also have cables where I can go from 1/4-inch to RCA, because often I'm playing shows where they're using a DJ mixer. So I have to go into one channel of that mixer. So I need something to come out 1/4-inch and go in RCA. So I keep those cables in my emergency bag of things to take with me. Let's see here. Oh, what's going on? On-prem music. So sad I missed you on Saturday night for the Buchla after party. Yeah, it was a fun one. Sorry you guys had to go back so early. That was unfortunate. It was a very fun show. But it was good to see you guys. I wish I could have come earlier and seen your show, but I couldn't make it there for Thursday, unfortunately, because of work. But I saw some of the videos, looked awesome as always. So yeah, that would have been fun, but unfortunately, we got to pay the bills. So we got to do some work in order to make that happen. Let's see what else. Where are we? Any other questions? Let me know if you've got other questions. Anything on the gear, anything on the live setup, anything on performances, anything on my courses. I'd love to get a few more people in the course. I've got a few spots still available for both courses. So if you're on the fence about it, jump on. There's a 25% discount right now. So it's a good excuse to get in there. As the people that are on the chat here that have taken the course will tell you, it's a really good way to kind of jumpstart your improvements in live performance or just using your gear. Like there's been a bunch of people that have taken the course that aren't actually planning to get out and play shows, but they're doing it because they want to get more comfortable improvising on their gear and playing it like an instrument. And so I recommend that if you're into doing that, if you want to get to know your gear better, if you're curious about how to improvise rather than just kind of pre-plan songs and pre-plan a set and play it, and you'd like some more freedom in your performances, even if those performances are just for you, being able to kind of free flowing and perform. There's a whole system for how to set up your gear and how to use your gear in order to make that, and that's what the course is all about. So that's the performance course. So if you're into that, definitely. And if you're already performing and you're maybe already producing and you're looking for ways to make those crossover and use kind of like the best of both worlds, so you get the best of the hardware improvised performance world into your productions and the best of your the precision and the capabilities of a DAW, and using that to augment your production, or sorry, your performances by, creating samples and doing things like that you can load into a black box or into an Octatrack or whatever. And so you can have samples with you that can augment your performances. And there's a lot of play back and forth between, kind of the quote unquote DAW-less world and the DAW world. And I'm a big fan of getting the most out of both, using both of them for whatever whatever are the strengths of each one. And I think that you end up with something much better in the long run. And so that's why I like to use both. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the performance course. If you're interested, the production course. And if you're interested in the improvised live performance part, I would say sign up for the performance course. I'd love to see you on there. And remember, if you use code 2025, you get 25% off of any of the courses. So let's see, what else do we have? Do you think Eurorack is necessary for the live improvisation thing? No, not at all. We actually talk about this a lot in the course, but I use Eurorack not because it's necessary, but because I enjoy it. So all of the things that I do in my modular rig, I could do in hardware boxes, or I could do in a laptop with a MIDI controller. Frankly, like I don't need any of this stuff. The reason I use this is because for me, I get a lot of inspiration and a lot of pleasure out of playing this kind of gear, out of being able to kind of reach out, turn a knob and have a thing happen, rather than going into a menu and turning a parameter and going to a different menu and then turning that exact same knob. I also feel like for live performance, I feel like there's an element of it that is a lot more entertaining for the crowd if you are using gear that people can actually see what you're doing, because they're not looking at the screen. They don't see the parameter changing. So, this knob on this box can be 40 different parameters depending on what screen I'm on. So I can just change screens and keep moving the same knob. And from the audience, all they're seeing is me just turn that one knob. And so there's not a lot of interaction. And so for me, I like the kind of show aspect of being able to have them see me turn a knob and hear the sound change. And then I turn a different knob and they hear a different sound change. So they can actually see the interaction while they're hearing the interaction. And it's not just all taking place within a box or within a computer or on a screen, because they can't really see that. So for me, I prefer this, but it's absolutely not necessary. I've had people in the course who were using a single Electron box. I had one guy in the course who had one, I think it was a Mother 32 or Mavis, I can't remember, one of the smaller Moog synthesizers, and an iPad. And then there's other people that are using, you know, full modular rigs, other people that have combinations of modular and hardware, other people that are fully hardware with no modular. So all of the things in the course, in both courses actually, really apply no matter which gear you're using, because it's not a course on how to use individual pieces of gear. It's a course on how you can use any pieces of gear and set them up in such a way that you can improvise a performance, that you can play something that you write in the moment. So like everything that I just played a minute ago was all just made up in that moment. That was just all like ideas coming to my head. I get an idea and then I do it. And so setting up the gear in such a way that that's possible is a big part of the course. And then things that you can do to keep yourself organized, simplified, yet have things sound full and complete, how you can process signals, how you can select your sounds and mix them, because mixing is one of the most challenging things in live performance, is getting, because we don't have the ability like you do in a DAW to just, you know, chuck a compressor on every single track and sidechain everything to everything else, and then you can fix all these mistakes that you made in order to get to something that sounds a little bit better. With this, you don't have that control. You don't have EQs per channel. You don't have compressors per channel. You don't have limiters per channel, you know, all of that stuff. And so there's a real system to setting up your sounds and to practicing how to use those sounds so that they don't step on top of each other when you're performing, so things can sound clean. And if you do that from the start using a good setup, you don't have to go back through and fix things afterwards. And so there's a lot of the course that's about that as well. So yes, you absolutely do not need modular for the course or for performing live. It's an extra, and I'm thankful that I'm able to have this rig and be able to do this stuff, but it's absolutely not necessary. I saw last year at Superbooth, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cuckoo, I saw him perform an entire live set on a Diatone, the original one. So he only had 4 tracks and 1 machine, and he played a whole club set on it. So you don't need all the stuff, but there are advantages both in the fun of playing and the immediacy of playing that you get from whether it's hardware boxes or Eurorack that you don't get from other things. So that's how I feel about that. Let's see. I'm bringing some Electron gear and an Oxy One. Cool. That's a great setup. Would a Torso T1 be able to send MIDI to something like a Behringer wing rack to turn the effects into instruments of a sort? Maybe. I'm actually not familiar with the Behringer wing rack, so I don't know. I would have to see. But I mean, the Torso T1 can send MIDI to anything. It's just like like an Oxy, a Torso, a Hapax, like any of the modern kind of crazy, wild, super capable sequencers can send MIDI to anything. You can set them up via CC messages to send MIDI to anything. So if the Behringer device you're talking about on the other end can receive MIDI and can react to MIDI, then sure, you could set that up in a Torso or an Oxy or a Hapax or a BeatStep or a controller like the Chic or like anything. Any MIDI controller will send MIDI CC messages, and as long as they can be received by the device on the other side, then it should work just fine. What else? Any other questions? All right. Well, I'll open it up to last few questions before we call it a day. Let me know if there's anything else you want to chat about or have questions about as far as the course, the gear, shows, upcoming shows. The next ones I have coming up are February 21st. I'll be playing in Richmond, Virginia, at a warehouse party. I'll give some more details about that later on. And then February 22nd, I'm playing in Ashland, Virginia, right next to Richmond, for an event that Board Brain is putting on, which is kind of a synth meetup. They're going to do some DIY builds of some of their gear. There's going to be like a swap meet if you want to buy or sell gear. And then there's going to be some chats. And then in the evening, some performances. So I'm playing at that as well. That's February. March, I'll be playing the 15th in Colorado Springs for an event there. That's a big modular and electronic music event, which I'm excited about. So that's March. April, not sure yet. Have a couple things in the works, but not finalized. Then the last week of April, I head to Europe. I'll be playing the 1st of May in Berlin, which will be fun. I'm playing on a boat, which I'm pretty excited about. And then the 10th of May, doing a live stream in Berlin, which I'll get you some information about once I have that. Yeah, and then I have a bunch of other things that are kind of in the works. So we'll see how they work out. Maybe Salt Lake City, maybe Florida, maybe Seattle, maybe Vancouver, Chicago, a whole bunch. So I'll let you know as those happen, but these are the ones that I have for sure coming up. So yeah. Yep. Got to get me through Nashville. Yes, absolutely. Get me to Nashville. I love Nashville. It's a great city. Yeah, and anywhere you'd like to see me play, just talk to your local promoters. That's really the best way to get me to come play somewhere, is just talk to your local promoters, let them know you're interested, give them contact information on how to get in touch with me, whether it's through YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and they can reach out to me directly if they want, and happy to get things scheduled. Like, I love to travel around. I usually try to play about once a month, so it works out pretty well with work. So any time that we can get out would be amazing. So if you've got somebody in your local area, if you know a promoter or a club, or you want to put something together or whatever, definitely reach out. I'm always open to playing new places. So I would love to do all of that. Cool. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook Messenger, or through YouTube in the comments or whatever. I'll try to answer any questions you guys have. And if you're interested in the course, definitely go on and sign up right away, circlelive.com/courses, and pick which one of the courses you're interested in and get that signed up, so we can get you in on the next cohort, which starts in a week. So I'd love to have you on there. But anyway, thank you all very much for hanging out a little bit today. And I missed this. It's been a couple of weeks, so it's been nice. Thank